Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Mindy here. I hope you had a phenomenal weekend and you're off to a start of a great week. Today I wanted to talk about a very common note in fragrances, and that is vanilla. It's common for me to go on the forums and see people begging for suggestions that do not have vanilla in them, and that is not what we're going to talk about today. Today we are going to focus on affordable vanillas. I thought this would be a really fun opportunity to make maybe a 3 or 4 part series out of this specific topic. Today, talk about affordable vanillas. In a future video, talk about vanillas that I won't be adding to my collection. Maybe a video on mid to high range priced vanillas that I really love. And then also maybe talk about vanilla heavy fragrances that are not vanilla centric. So maybe like Guerlain Intense, fragrances like that are gorgeous and they have a strong vanillic presence. So vanilla is a note said to be a natural aphrodisiac, which I have never heard of, but I do think it is common for men to find vanilla attractive, and that seems to be supported in some of the research that I've done in preparation for this video. So yeah, it's just a note that apparently men find attractive in women, so there's no surprise it's so heavily used in fragrance. So today I'm going to focus in on those affordable vanillas that I love, that I think are great options for somebody looking for affordable vanillas. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first fragrance I wanted to talk about is Nirvana Bourbon by Elizabeth and James. And with this fragrance, I only have the rollerball, which just about drives me crazy. So this fragrance has a reputation for being a little bit soft, not a lot of longevity. And I mentioned on videos before that I really don't mind doing a midday spray, but when it comes to the rollerball, you can't really do that. You have to reapply it on your skin, and I really wish that I had a full bottle of this fragrance. I have seen people talk about getting this fragrance, I think a full bottle, maybe 50 ml or 100 ml at Kohl's at the price point of around $20, maybe $25. So that's something I'm interested in exploring because I would love to have a spray for this one. As boozy vanillas go, I do think this is a really good one. It does have a strong woody presence to my nose, and it does go on strong. I've applied it 3 times now to my hand right here, and when you first apply it, you do get a really strong woody aspect with a little bit of that booziness in the background. There is vanilla, tuberose, and oak listed in the notes here, and it is a really pretty vanilla fragrance. Now I will say that not everybody is going to like this fragrance. I do have a friend that's not crazy about it, so you have to like that booziness in your fragrance to enjoy this one. But I do think this is a phenomenal fragrance for the winter months or the cool summer months to wear. This is unisex to my nose. It's equally wearable for a man as it is a woman, and really just a nice vanillic option. Really, the downside for this fragrance really comes down to the performance that I mentioned before. It does have a reputation for having soft projection, short longevity, so I definitely want to see if buying a full bottle helps that out. But nonetheless, I do really enjoy the scent profile, and you can get a hold of this bottle for fairly inexpensive prices, so this is a good one to consider. Nirvana Bourbon by Elizabeth and James. The next fragrance that I want to touch on is Vanille Doree by Alexandria Fragrances. The reason I picked this fragrance up is because it is a dupe for the masterpiece that is Spiritueuse Double Vanille by Guerlain. I tested this a couple times through a sample, and I absolutely loved this fragrance. I didn't want to pay the full price for it without exploring if there were other options available, and so I did pick up Vanille Doree at a reasonable price. In fact, of all of the fragrances that I have here, this is probably the most expensive. I think this is a 30 ml, and it runs around $42.99 if I remember correctly on the Alexandria Fragrances website, and this is a really nice fragrance. Now what I'll say here is that they do smell slightly different to me, and that difference was enough for me to want to go buy the full bottle of this. They are so close on paper, and I sprayed these a couple hours ago. I've been playing with them throughout the day. This is Spiritueuse Double Vanille, and this is Vanille Doree. And when I smell them and compare them side by side, they really do smell very, very similar. And a piece of me wonders if the differences are just up in my head and I think I'm picking them up, but I think I'm picking them up. What I seem to be noticing is that Vanille Doree has a little bit more of a tobacco smell to it, whereas with the original Spiritueuse Double Vanille, I get slightly more booziness and it seems a little bit more refined. Now, I think to most people, this would not be noticeable. In fact, if I played a little bit more with Vanille Doree before I picked up Spiritueuse Double Vanille, I may have thought it would suffice, but I did seem to be picking up some differences on my skin when I did a side-by-side comparison. And again, it was enough for me to want to move forward with a full bottle. I call Spiritueuse Double Vanille a masterpiece because for somebody who's wanting to get a boozy, slight tobacco type vanilla, it is an extraordinarily beautifully refined vanillic scent. It is different from any other basic vanilla, for lack of a better word. It is a stunning fragrance and one I get a great deal of joy out of wearing. It's just one that makes me feel good. I do reach for it more in the winter months because it is a little bit heavy, it is warm, but a gorgeous fragrance nonetheless and one that I love. So I think that a lot of people would enjoy this fragrance. I think a lot of people would be completely content to have Vanille Doree in their collection, but this is one that I do suggest you comparing side by side before you make an ultimate decision. If you think that Vanille Doree would suffice for what you're looking for, definitely check this one out before you pay full price on Spiritueuse Double Vanille. The next fragrance I wanted to touch on briefly is Island Vanilla by Pacifica. This is a very affordable fragrance. It is also very accessible. It's in many Targets. You can test it, you can try it, and it's also in Whole Foods. So I find this to be a gorgeous, simplistic, easygoing vanilla. It's quite linear to my nose, but it has some character to it. It's sweet, it's pretty, the slightest hint of floral in here, and the notes have honey in them. So the notes here are vanilla, white honey, tea, fruity notes, and jasmine, and I do pick up the honey note here. I'm a little apprehensive with some honey fragrances. I'm not always crazy about that note. Sometimes I am, but in this case, it's subtle enough for me to really enjoy. I'm curious, what other fragrances are you guys trying from the Pacifica line? I've seen one called Island Coconut, Indian Coconut. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it's definitely piqued my interest, and there seem to be others from this line that are quite popular. So please let me know. I think this is a great affordable vanilla for anyone who wants something along these lines. Definitely one to check out and test. Again, that is Island Vanilla by Pacifica. The next two affordable vanillas that I wanted to touch on are Solinotes Vanilla and Outremer Vanille. The reason I'm showing these two together is because they are very similar to my nose. I've talked about Vanille West Indies before and how I acquired that fragrance into my collection. I do love it. It is a gorgeous, rich, warm, caramelic vanilla, but it does come at a bit of a premium, and I'm not sure everyone is going to want to pay those prices. Not to mention, there was a period of time where it wasn't really all that accessible. And so I highly recommend getting your nose on one of these fragrances. They are both accessible from what I can tell. Solinotes is carried in Target, but I've also seen it on Amazon before. In fact, I got this off of Amazon. And then this one is also available. I'll link it up here if I can find exactly where I bought it. But I do find these to be very, very nice, but linear vanillas that a lot of people would enjoy. I don't know about you guys, but I have been on a mission over the past year to find my holy grail vanilla, find the vanilla that I love the most, which is why I brought so many into my collection. But I do think somebody who is looking for a fairly linear, basic, likable vanilla, these will definitely fit that bill. I also find these to be amazing layering vanillas. I don't do a ton of layering, but at times I love to layer my fragrances. For example, Coco Mademoiselle Intense is one of my very favorite fragrances. At times I like to layer it with a vanilla like these or with Tihota by Indult. I've done that on a vacation in the past and just loved the pairing of the two. So I find these to be very versatile and they can be used in many different ways. Again, that is Solinotes Vanilla and Outremer Vanille. Another fragrance that is brand new to my collection and I'm really excited about is Vanilla Bourbon by Mix Bar. This is another fragrance that is available at Target. In fact, that's the only place I've seen it at so far. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that bourbon vanilla is one of my very favorite fragrance notes. Now, ironically, I don't see bourbon vanilla in the notes here. I see Madagascar vanilla, oak, jasmine, black pepper, and apple blossom. And I find this to be another fragrance that is perfectly unisex. And I find it beautiful. This one is gorgeous. I find vanilla bourbon to be very much along those lines of Nirvana bourbon by Elizabeth and James. Now this one I find to be sweeter. It's a little bit softer to my nose and doesn't have as heavy of a woody presence as Nirvana bourbon has. So when I say it's a little bit softer, I don't mean that in a bad way. I find it to be really, really gorgeous. I think sometimes Nirvana bourbon, when you first spray it or when you first apply it in my case, it does come off a little bit heavy and that does dissipate over time. But this one really stays soft across the wear and it kind of smooths out some of those hard edges that I find here. You know, my initial reaction, I haven't been wearing this for very long, is that the sillage is fairly soft, but I'll have to explore it a little bit more. What I do know is the longevity seems to be pretty strong. There was one day that I sprayed it at 12 o'clock at noon and the next day it was still very present on my skin in the morning and it still smelled absolutely gorgeous. So if you're interested in a vanilla bourbon type scent, I definitely recommend testing this one out. Okay, the last vanilla fragrance that I want to talk about, I'm not certain if this one is accessible at all anymore. And so I debated even sharing this on the list, but I do find this to be one of the most gorgeous, affordable vanillas that I've smelled. So this is Cologne of the Missions, and I only have a sample here that I bought maybe a year ago by Le Couvant Maison de Parfum. I apologize if I said that completely wrong. I'm certain I butchered it, but this is an incredible fragrance. Like I had mentioned, this is probably one of my very favorite vanilla fragrances that I've tried over the past year or so. It's the perfect balance of vanilla, ambery warmth with a hint of spiciness, delicious sweetness, and maybe a hint of booziness there in the background. I do see that this is often compared to Spiritueuse Double Vanille. I do think Spiritueuse Double Vanille has a heavier tobacco and a heavier boozy type presence, but that being said, this is incredible. I think it's gorgeous. I've been seeing in forums for over a year now that this has been discontinued. And I'm not sure if that's true. I'm curious if you guys know anything more definitive on this. What I've read is that this used to be available in Ulta for only $30. And I do think it was a pretty, large bottle back when they used to sell it. And that's dating quite a bit back. I don't know how far back that goes, but then there was a period of time where I read it was only accessible in Europe and some countries that are not near me, and they weren't shipping to the United States and some other countries. So I don't know what the current status is, but my hunch is, seeing some of the prices that this is going for on eBay, that it is no longer available. It's no longer accessible, probably has been discontinued because this is going for some pretty hefty price points. Selfishly, I'm curious if anyone has seen Cologne of the Missions at any of the discount retailers. In the US, I'm thinking about TJ Maxx, at Marshall's, and at Ross, and then I think in other areas of the world it might be TK Maxx. If you guys have come across this at an affordable price, please let me know. I'm super curious. It's a gorgeous fragrance. It's one I wish I could buy a full bottle of, and it's one that I'm using very sparingly because I only have 8 or 10 milliliters here, and I am trying to hold out on using it too much. But again, it's Just such a beautiful scent. All right guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video of affordable vanillas, with the exception, of course, of this one. And if you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and until next time, I'll see you soon.